Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Dolce & Gabbana Gemstone collection. So they released an eyeshadow palette and 4 lipsticks with gemstones on there. There's also a lip balm that came out after I ordered, and that actually looks really pretty. It looks like a light pink with, sparkly shimmer in it. So I am hoping to get that at some point. In addition, we're also going to be taking a look at the new loose powder from Decorte and one of their new blush shades. So we have shade 807. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start off with the Decorte powder. So on my skin already, I have on the new Dolce & Gabbana primer. It's the Everlast primer. I will have a video on that later. I'm still in the testing phase on that. And then my favorite Cle de Peau foundation mix of the Radiant Matte and Radiant Natural in shade I-10. Then I'm topping that with, on the right side, the Decorte loose powder using a powder brush to get a really soft finish. And on the left, I'm using the puff that it comes with. And you can see you can definitely get a bit more product that way. Now, I purchased the powder directly from the Decorte website, but it is also available at Saks. However, I typically usually purchase Decorte directly from their website. Their shipping and everything is reasonable. It's pretty fast. So I haven't had any issues purchasing from them. This is a translucent setting powder. It retails for $50 US. And this has a 1-year shelf life, 20 grams of product. And this is made in Japan. The shade for this powder is number 7, Nude Matte Snow. And I think it's a really beautiful shade. Their normal powder, their best seller, is shade number 6, Nude Matte Beige. So this is going to be a bit whiter, translucent, but if you do have a deeper skin tone, you might want to consider the beige version. According to Decorte, it's a lightweight, ultra-fine, silky face powder that blends effortlessly for a long-lasting, radiant matte finish, infused with skin-caring ingredients to help ensure lasting, non-drying comfort throughout the day. Skin feels naked and looks luminous with a veil of light. I don't see any talc listed in the ingredients. One of their key ingredients is certified organic silk powder, which is supposed to create the luminous skin. Decorte has a harmonized prism technology. According to them, it says, our proprietary light blending technology manipulates the reflection, permeation, and diffusion of light, creating a stunning harmony and covering the skin with a fine, elegant veil. No matter what tone or texture your skin has, this powder will leave it looking perfect and creates a silky smooth surface with a refined radiance. Now, I have used Decorte powders in the past, but I've never tried their loose powder. I've only used pressed powders from them. And I have to say, I do really like the loose powder. I prefer it actually over their pressed powder. I think this really does give a luminous matte finish. However, if you are going with this new shade number 7, just keep in mind that it's very light. It's more of that brightening. I wouldn't say that it looks white per se on me, but it definitely has more of that whitish luminosity. So a deeper skin tone, I think, would be better off with shade number 6, the Nude Matte Beige. One other thing to note, there is fragrance in this powder. I would have to say that it's pretty subtle. I don't really notice it putting it on, but it is marked there in the ingredients. So when I go up and I actually sniff the container, I can smell it. But during regular application, it's not noticeable. So it's pretty subtle, but it's going to be one of those floral fragrances. So let's just take a look at the powder. You can see we do have kind of this bright white powder. And this is what it looks like blended out. Let's blend it out a little bit better. That's more of a swatch. If you totally blend that out, you can see you are going to get some of that whitish luminosity. Let's go ahead and take a look at the new shade of the Decorte blush. Now, I haven't used very many Decorte products, so this is actually new to me. This is my first time using their blush. And this one here is shade 807. So just a note about the packaging here. This is actually all plastic. And then it does come with an applicator. All right, so shade 807. So this is a powder formula, but you can see that it goes on very smoothly. It actually feels kind of like a creamy powder texture, but it definitely applies more like a powder. Just when you touch it with your finger, you can feel a little creaminess. So online, this looked a little bit more lavender than it is in person. It's really more of just a soft rose shade. And I'd say it's fairly neutral. I thought it was going to be cooler than it is, but I wouldn't say that it's a warm blush. Let's take a look at this on the cheeks. The Decorte Powder Blush retails for $50 US, and their site does have free shipping at $100 US, which is why I ended up picking up both of these products. So shade 807 is one of their new shades, and it is called Lavender Pink. I have to say though, I don't really find it to be much of a lavender hue in here. I wouldn't even say that it really leans cool. I would say it's pretty smack dab neutral rose. And I think it's a really pretty shade, but I think the name is a bit misleading. As for product details, this is made in Japan. We have 5 grams of product, and there is no suggested shelf life on here. As I mentioned, the case is plastic. The closure is magnetic on here, so just something to note that can sometimes affect how you store things. Now in the demo, you can see I have tried out 2 different brushes with this. You can see how you can build this up. Really, this is going to be a light blush shade regardless. So on the right, I used the Tancedo KC20, which is kind of a light and airy blush brush. And then on the other side, I wanted to go ahead with something a little bit more dense. So I used a short buffing brush. It's technically a powder foundation brush. And this is the SUQQU FO2, which by the way, if you're looking for an incredibly soft buffing brush for powders, this is a great one. So I used that on the left. You can see that the build-up of color, really, there's not a huge difference between the 2 brushes. It's a nice powder blush that goes on very easily. Pickup is easy with the brush. And even with a light airy brush, you can still build up the color to almost the same level of opacity as with something more dense. I think it's a really nice product. I would like to try more of their blushes, but again, I am a little disappointed that the color is just slightly misleading here. I would say again that it is a neutral rose. Now, if you look at it in certain lighting, maybe you can kind of see a little bit of that pinkish lavender hue to it. But in my opinion, it's really not a lavender pink. So before we move on, I just wanted to compare it to this blush from SUQQU. This is shade 105 from their Melting Powder Blushes. It was a limited edition and it has, the formula has been discontinued. But this is more of a lavender pink blush. You can see that it's much cooler in tone. We have a little bit of a lavender hue to it, you know, mixed with that pink. This is more of a true lavender pink in my opinion. And you can see it's significantly cooler in tone. Obviously our finish is different. The Decorte has a matte finish, but I just wanted to kind of give you a point of reference for what I think of as a lavender pink blush. One more comparison. This is shade number 4 from SUQQU. This is their blurring color blush. This is more of a like classic pink rose. You can see it's deeper in tone, but you can see that the actual undertones, let me buff this in here, are more comparable to that of the Decorte. So again, definitely more of a neutral rose shade to me. So I hope that was helpful. Let's go ahead and move on to the Dolce & Gabbana collection. So the Gemstone collection, it kind of took me by surprise. It just showed up at Saks one day. I don't typically order from Saks anymore because I do not have a Saks credit card, which means to get to free shipping, I have to spend $300 US minimum. So I ended up picking up the entire Gemstone collection, and it's still not available on the Dolce & Gabbana site, but they did have the pictures of the collection posted the other day. The links didn't work, but the pictures were up. They've since taken them down, but to me that says it's coming soon to the website. So they had all of the items that I have here today. Those photos were posted on the website, but the lip balm that I mentioned just showed up at Saks, and it's not, I didn't see pictures of that one yet on the Dolce & Gabbana site. So I'm hoping it comes there because I do plan on picking that up when it becomes available. So let's take a look at this eyeshadow quad. And you can see if you go in with your fingers or a foam tip applicator, you are going to really get intense color here. Now we do get applicators or an applicator that comes with this. We have a dual-ended applicator that has a brush on one side and a foam tip applicator on the other. So the brush is really going to give you a more diffuse look like what I have on my eyes right now. But if you go in with fingers or foam, you've got really intense, rich, shimmering shades here. So let's take a look at these colors. First up, we have kind of this like terracotta rusty matte shade. And I have to say, it's kind of a nice silky matte. It goes on very easily. It's easy to get, you know, a thin layer of coverage or to build that up a little bit more. Then these three shades are going to be shimmery and the textures are slightly different. So let's look at the tones and then we'll move straight on to the demos. So this shade here can actually be used as a topper. When you spread this out with a brush, you have more of a topper shade. And you can see this is going to be more of a rose gold. We get a little bit of a color reflect from a gold to a rose shade. This one here is a very creamy metallic texture. And actually, these two are both creamy metallics. This one here feels a little bit creamier, perhaps just a little bit more emollient textures in here, whereas this one feels slightly drier and chunkier. But the formula for these two, what they really remind me of are the Victoria Beckham eyeshadows in the little pots. Now, as for the shades, you can see that this one here has a bit of a pinkish hue to it. It's kind of like a rosy champagne. It leans a bit warm. And then this last shade here is more of a coppery bronze. And I think they're really pretty. So overall, this is going to be a warm eyeshadow palette. Let's take a look at the demos and details. The Dolce & Gabbana Gemstone eyeshadow palette is in the shade Quartz Harmony. It's made in Italy. And we have a 2-year shelf life and 3.2 grams of product. As I mentioned, I purchased mine from Saks. It retails for $65 US. And according to the information on Saks, it's limited edition. It says, dress the eyes with jewel-inspired makeup for dazzling eyes. This limited edition eyeshadow quad from Dolce & Gabbana features a quartz harmony with 4 shades in 3 finishes. 1 soft matte, 2 metallics, and 1 duo shimmer. The soft matte offers a 1-stroke color impact with an extraordinarily creamy and gliding texture. The metallics provide full color coverage and intensity with a sensorial texture, and the duo shimmer delivers a multi-dimensional glow with an ultra gliding texture, perfect for creating glamorous and sophisticated looks. This palette is encased in a jewel-inspired precious compact with a dual-ended brush, making it the ultimate beauty accessory. As for the packaging, we have a click closure, and the packaging, everything is pretty much plastic, but it's still weighty. So it still feels luxe because of that gemstone on top kind of weighting things down. So as I mentioned, we have the applicator that it comes with, and there is a full-size mirror in there. Now, as you're looking at the 4 shades, the matte, you can see it glides on very silkily. It has a nice silky texture to it. I know in the description from Dolce & Gabbana, it's described more as a creamier matte. It says it has a creamy and gliding texture. To me, it feels more like a silky powder, and it's really easy to apply and blend out. I actually really like the texture of it. Then the Duo Shimmer shade, this rose gold, if you put that on with a brush, it really disperses the shimmer a lot, so it looks more like a topper. When you put this on with a fingertip application, you definitely get more impact. But again, this has more of a translucent or transparent base to it. So it's really easy to kind of sheer out, and it's a little bit more challenging to get that more intense opaque shade from this. As for the 2 creamy metallics, as I mentioned, the more champagne shade feels a bit creamier than the more brown bronze shade. And I think they're both really nice. They're really easy to build up the color. They go on nicely. You can easily spread these out and sheer them out to get a lighter look, but you're still going to maintain that shimmer. I didn't experience any fallout with these, and I find them to be really nice formulas. Now, if you've used the I Dare You palette from Dolce & Gabbana, I do want to note that the shimmer sparkly shades in there are completely different. Those are more like a pressed glitter. Those formulas are nothing like the ones in this palette. These are really more of a chunkier, creamy metallic, very smooth, but you have kind of those like larger flakes of shimmer that kind of melt into the skin. So it gives you a very smooth finish, but texturally, that's what it feels like instead of the pressed glitters that we have there. As for the mattes, they're fairly similar in texture, but I feel like this particular one just blends out a little bit more easily than some of the ones in the I Dare You palette. So let's look at a few comparisons, but just for reference, this is the I Dare You palette. The closest to the metallics would have to be this swirled shade, but again, it is still going to be different. Let's go ahead and put that one right here. you can see that the shade on this is kind of similar to the second shade in this palette, but this is going to be more intense. So we have more of a color flip to it, and it's a more opaque product. This is more of a creamy metallic formula similar to these two versus this one, which is going to be a bit drier, more similar to a pressed glitter, but more emollient. These other shimmery shades here are pressed glitters essentially, so they don't really compare. Now the matte shades, well, you know what, let's try this brown here. We'll see how that one compares, but you can see this is a cooler tone brown. I like these mattes. I think the formula here is very similar, but I do have to say that putting it on, I feel like we get a more even coat with the new one here versus these ones here. Although I would have to say certain colors did kind of go on more smoothly than others. So overall, the matte formulas are going to be pretty much the same. Now I wanted to take a look at some of the Victoria Beckham shades here. And these are called the Lid Lusters. This first shade here is Honey. And I wanted to see how this compares. But formula wise, these are pretty similar, in my opinion, to the Dolce & Gabbana. So this is shade Honey. You can see it's kind of similar to the fourth shade in, or the third shade in the quad, but it's going to be a little bit, it doesn't have as much of, there's a little bit more like a rosy hue in the Dolce & Gabbana. Another shade we have here is Tea Rose. Now, if you have the Victoria Beckham, you definitely want to keep these little lids on there. Keeps them from drying out so they last a long time. So this is the shade Tea Rose, which is a bit more nude, actually, than any of the Dolce & Gabbana. This one here is the shade Blonde. And it doesn't really go, but I wanted to just compare it because I think it's a really pretty white gold shade for the holidays. It's one that I wear around the holidays a lot. I like this with like a nice eyeliner and a red lip. So it's one of my favorite go-tos for the holiday season. Then we have the shade Velvet. I think this, yeah, this is more olivey. So we'll put this down here. Doesn't really match. And I'm gonna have to pull this one out. I really like this shade. I haven't used this one in quite a while. And then the last one I wanted to look at is the shade Chiffon. And let's see how this compares. And yeah, let's get a little more on there. And it doesn't quite go. You can see you can kind of get a similar color story that's a little bit more nude than the Dolce & Gabbana. But this is going to have a bit more of your warmer, rosy, bronze tones to it. So the Dolce & Gabbana overall is going to be a bit warmer. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Let's go ahead and move on to the lipsticks. All right, so these are the lipsticks. You can see we have kind of a traditional lipstick bullet, gold, but then we have this plastic gemstone on top. So we have 4 different shades. This one here is called Ruby Blush. This is number 115. And we pull this up. This is actually my favorite shade from here. It's a nice, soft pink. It's the coolest of the lighter pink shades. It's neutral, leaning a little cool. I think this is just a nice everyday pink shade. So this is the one with the red cap. I have to say, I did kind of think the red lipstick that I'm wearing now would be in the red cap. I don't mind, but it's actually in the green cap. So I kind of like the red with the green, but it did kind of take me by surprise. Our next shade that I want to look at is number 210, Amethyst Rose. Now I have to say, the name Amethyst Rose, to me, I think of a lavender pink shade. So I'm thinking of something like cooler in tone. This is actually a warmer tone shade here. So this is more of a peachy rose. I feel like the names and the colors on the lids kind of just don't really go together. It's almost like they were random. And I wish that they coincided a little bit more, because I think a lavender purple kind of, or lavender rose kind of shade here would have been a really nice touch. Even just switching these two would have made a little bit more sense to me. Then we have number 415, Sapphire Rust. I think this is a really pretty, it's a nice rusty shade, but it's not too rusty. You can see it's actually rose. We have a touch of rust. It leans warm, but it's actually more neutral. I think it's a really beautiful shade. So Sapphire Rust, I actually don't mind it in the sapphire, just because I feel like the blues and rusty shades kind of go so nicely together. But again, it's just not something I would really expect. And then we have 420 Emerald Scarlet, which is this red that I'm wearing right now. And you can see it is kind of a classic red with a little bit of a pink base to it, a blue tone to it. So it's going to lean a little bit cool, but it's still relatively close to neutral. So these are the 4 lipstick shades. And as I mentioned, there is a lip balm that kind of reminds me of the sparkly Tom Ford lip balms that used to come out. And that one will have a clear gemstone on it. So let's take a look at the lip swatches. The Dolce & Gabbana Gemstone lipsticks retail for $53 US, and they are considered a shine finish. They're limited edition. They're made in Italy, and we have 3.5 grams of product. There is a bit of a fragrance to it. I would say it's not very overpowering. It's something I don't really notice too much, but you do have kind of a perfumey fragrance to it. So just note that it's not fragrance free. Now, I think the formula of these is actually a really nice satin formula. You've got a little bit of a vinyl texture to it. And you can see that even with one swipe, these are fairly opaque. So you've got a nice mix of shades here with some cooler shades and warmer shades that are on the lighter end of the spectrum and some on the deeper end of the spectrum. So I really like how they balance that. My only complaint is really just that, you know, that amethyst, I would have expected to be the cooler shade. So, you know, just kind of a personal preference there. But I actually really like these. I think they're very comfortable, easy to put on. Now, if you are working with some of the deeper shades and you do have, you know, fine lines around your lips, these might bleed a little bit. So I would recommend using a lip pencil. With this red lipstick, I used the Farrah Hamidi lip pencil in Velvet, which is a bit more of a cooler tone red. And, you know, there are so many different shades you could use with that though. So overall, I think it's a really nicely balanced color collection of lipsticks. I don't think all the lipsticks necessarily go super well with the quad, since the quad does lean a little bit warmer. I feel like with some of the cooler tone shades, well, really just the Ruby Blush, you know, I feel like maybe if you were using that quad with it, you'd want to focus more on the creamy champagne shade as your predominant shade, because in my opinion, that one just, it's a bit too cool for that eyeshadow quad. And I'm only bringing that up because that was a shade I really wanted to wear, but it just didn't look great, especially with my shirt as well. So just something to note there. But overall, I think it's a really nice finish. And I'm really happy I tried these. I actually really want to try that lip balm as well. So one more time, let's take a look at the colors. And Dolce & Gabbana just recently released their first new, lipstick line, the permanent line with slim style packaging. I actually did pick up quite a few of those. I've been testing them out, so I'll have those in a video soon. But before we move on, I do want to mention the nail polish. So I did get one of the Dolce & Gabbana nail polishes. This is shade number 2, Icon. And I love it. I think it looks way better in person than what you can actually see on camera. But we have, you know, it's semi-transparent. It's pretty opaque with one swipe, but only because there's so much shimmer. So the actual base itself is pretty transparent. And you can see we have, I would say the majority of the shimmer is going to be blue, but then we have some green and some pink and some lavender in there. And it just reminds me of like fairy wings. I think it is absolutely beautiful. I love the way it catches the light. So I just put this one on today. So when I talk about the rest of the lipsticks, I'll follow up with the nail polish and how it performs. But I have to say it dries quickly, evenly, and it was so easy to apply. So far it's a really positive experience and I want to try more. So one more time, let's just take a quick look at the shades of the lipsticks. We have 115 Ruby Blush, followed by 210. This is Amethyst Rose, followed by 415 Sapphire Rust and 420 Emerald Scarlet. So just a quick summation of everything that we've looked at today. We start off with the new Decorte Loose Powder in Nude Matte Snow, which is number 7. And I have to say, I really like it. This is a plastic jar, by the way, but I think it looks really nice. I love kind of this swirly design for where the powder comes out. And I think it goes on nicely with either the brush or the applicator. And although the colors don't really do anything like the Givenchy Prism Libre did, the finish feels kind of similar on the skin to me. So, you know, I think it's a nice powder. Then we took a look at the Decorte Blush in 807, and I have to say I really like the blush formula. It's a nice basic powder blush, nothing particularly unique about it, but it goes on easily and I like it. I am a little disappointed the color is not a true lavender pink, but I think it is still a nice product and I like it. I don't regret purchasing it. I think it's a good color that, you know, kind of like one of those everyday rosy shades. Then we took a look at the Dolce & Gabbana. This is the Quartz Harmony palette. And this is a really nice kind of your nude rose kind of shades, leaning warm. And I think overall the formulas in here are really nice. And yeah, overall, I think that's a nice quad there. And then we took a look at the 4 Gemstone lipsticks and I really like them. I like the formula. It's kind of your traditional satin formula with a touch of vinyl in there. Really easy to apply. You have a nice sheen to them. They're comfortable and I think they did a nice job with the shade range. So those are my thoughts on these items. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Please share them down below in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in and I will see you very soon. Have a great day.